My name's Jeff St Laurent, and this is the Tuesday call. Got a packed house today on the call, and I'm always excited to be delivering great content. Before we get rolling, just a couple housekeeping things to make you guys aware of where you can find this with the recording, and also other valuable things that I put out there to help everyone. I'm helping coaches transition to a full-time business. And it's an adventure, let me tell you that. And a lot of passionate people are out there, and they want it so badly. And they work so hard at the skill set of coaching, but now it's a matter of like, how do I take this passion of mine and turn it into a business? And that's where my efforts, whether it's through my free content that I'm doing like on these Tuesday calls, or whether it's in my paid things like my one-on-one mentoring or my group mentoring program, whatever it is, my whole goal is to help you guys move forward. So these calls, like I said, are recorded. You can visit my website, sellingcoaching.com. If you go under the university, that's where you'll see all the recorded calls. This is going to be the 46th call that I've posted anyways. I've done a few more. But so there's going to be the calls available there. I also got well over 100 videos that are shorter ones as well, like 2 to 3 minutes or so, which short, quick educational things. I'm a real big advocate of creating valuable content, and that's exactly what today's call is. So if you want examples of content, you can go to my Selling Coaching University and see what I create there. Even today, this Tuesday call, live call, it's creating content. It's live for everybody, but then also I record it and I post it as content, and a lot of it too is in the future. I can take some of that stuff and I can pull from it to make different paid products as well, when you combine it together and repurpose it. So there's lots of things we can do with that, but I just wanted to give you those examples. Also on my website, sellingcoaching.com, for those of you that aren't a member of my Selling Coaching private Facebook group, I'd invite you over there to at least check it out. If you go right to the top of my any of the page on my website, sellingcoaching.com, you'll see a little banner that says join my private Facebook group. I'd love to have you over there. A lot of great group of coaches over there, and we got some exciting things coming up. I haven't even said anything about them yet, but we got some exciting things coming up always, but especially with the new year and really pushing forward, and especially in terms of getting our message out there and marketing ourselves. So stay tuned for that, and if you're not over there, I'd love to see you over there in that group. And then lastly, of course, if you are really looking for the extra guidance, I am available for one-on-one mentoring, or I have a great group mentoring program as well. If you want to just check it out on my website, just you can go to the Work With Me tab, and then just scroll to the bottom, click out a form, fill out the form, and come to me, and we'll just discuss. It doesn't mean you have to hire me or anything like that. Let's just see where you're at, and even if I can just direct you to some of my content that I have that's free, or just get you in the group, or whatever it is, like I said, it doesn't matter to me. I want to help you guys move forward, because I know I've been there. I've been doing this full time since 2004, and I attribute that long-term success to what I've learned, not only in the business side of things, but obviously, hence the name of my business, Selling Coaching, is the art of selling, and that's where a lot of what we're going to talk about today, strategies to create valuable content. I always relate things back to the selling aspect, because even before we started this call, with the people on it, I asked them, I say, what are some of the challenges that you're having in terms of creating content? And a lot of it, surfaced around or led back to basically, well, how do I get the result from this? If I'm going to create free content, if I'm going to create valuable content for my audience, or to build an audience and engage them, how am I going to get paid from it? How do I convert it into paid clients? And let me address that. So let's jump right into this. And one of the things I want to say, and I'll always tie this back to, like, if I'm working with you one-on-one as your mentor coach, and you were to hire me, and we were to start looking at where we start your business, the number one thing I'm going to start to work with you on is where's your message? Meaning, who's your message for? Who are you helping with what specifically? And the reason we're going to do that is start to identify that, and some people call it a niche, but either way, the reason I want to start to work with you on that is because that's going to really translate into everything where we go with our marketing, in terms of where they are, what they're looking for, what are their challenges, and what value from a solution standpoint are we providing for them. And so once we understand those things, that's when we start to build our audience. And I'll say this a million times, like on everything that I ever do, and I want to ingrain this in all of your heads, is that our number one objective as a business owner is to build an audience. Think of it as a community, and we can call it whatever you want, but it's a community of people. And then once we build them, once we attract them, we want to engage them and keep them engaged, doing things like the Tuesday call like I do, doing things like you're posting in your group, and starting to engage them with some of the content that you begin to deliver. We also attract an audience by creating content, and that's the whole premise of this call, is to say, I want to help start to teach you why we're doing this stuff. I don't just want you to start creating videos or writing articles or blog posts or doing calls or whatever just to do them. We want to understand the purpose of them. And again, the purpose of them, just like think of this Tuesday call as an example. It's a great opportunity for people either within my network. There are some people right now on the call that are in my community already. They're on my email list. They're in my private Facebook group. Some of them are paid clients. Some of them are people I've known for a while because they're in the group and they participate in the group. Then there's some people on the call that are here for the first time, and when you'll hear me when I do the introductions and I say, welcome to the call, and I'm like, who are you? How do I know you? And that means like, I don't know this person yet, or maybe they know me, or maybe we've talked and we haven't spent much time together. I don't know you, so I want to get to know you. Those are the people that they haven't gone over to my website yet and maybe subscribed, enter my email list for my free offer, the ultimate startup guide for new coaches. Maybe they haven't gone over to, my private Facebook group, join that piece. So the objective for them is to, hey, turn them on with some great content that I'm delivering, where they can feel like, wow, this guy maybe knows what he's talking about. I like him. I like, what he represents, so forth and so on. To compel them to want to go over and do those actions that I just stated, so that I can now be in front of them because they're in my audience. And then again, for all those people that are already in my audience, this is a place where we get to connect. It's a place where you get to learn, and I keep you engaged, and I keep myself in front of you. So the content that you're creating is to attract, and then once engage and keep those people in your community, keep yourself in front of them. And I relate this back to selling, because we want to understand this, is that the reason why we want to stay in front of them on a consistent basis, and this is why we want to keep continually being able to create content with ease. When it's created with ease and it's fun and it's authentic and it just comes out, that's when it's a lot easier, but it's also a lot more effective as well. But it needs to be consistent, because we have to recognize that, while each and every one of you has a need, meaning, okay, well, you're here because you want to build or grow your coaching practice. A lot of you, like I said, I help coaches transition to a full-time business. So a lot of it's going to be, I want to, quit my job or do this, or I just want to get paid, more than I'm getting paid. And so, with that being said, we want to think about where we're going with our business and how we're moving it forward. But the timing for each one of you in order to, let's say, buy something is different. And that's why I need to stay in front of you on a consistent basis, like a daily basis. And that's because one time, all of you have that need, like I said, but all of a sudden, one day, that need the timing turns now. Because people buy when they have a need, and the timing is now. People might have a need, but they don't buy if the timing isn't now. And that's what we want to understand. The timing piece is vital. And that's why once we've got them in our audience, we need to consistently be in front of them over time, because we want to make sure that all that work, all that marketing effort we've done through content and engagement and so forth and so on pays off for when that person is ready to do something. And when they're ready to do something, you need to be top of mind. And the way you be top of mind is, next thing you know, you send out an email, and then they get the email. You send out the information for your, quote, Tuesday call that you do, or you post something in your private Facebook group, or you make a comment, and all of a sudden you're in front of them, and they go, oh yeah. And because you've been there, and because you've been in front of them, and you've been an influence with them, and you've helped them in some capacity, and you might never know how you've helped them through your content. There's a lot of people that consume my content that I don't even know they're consuming it. And then somewhere down the road, it's like, oh yeah, I've been listening to your calls for a long time now, or I love what you do. And I'm like, you do? I just met you. But what that's doing is that's building value over time. People were asking before is, how do we build that value? Building value it could be instantaneous, in one call, in one session, in one event, in one little video or article that you do, it might build the value for someone to be like, wow, this person's great. I'd love to work with them. And if the timing's right, it happens. And that can happen. But just recognize it's a consistency over time. So I wanted to start off with understanding the why behind what I'm talking about here and creating that content and starting to hopefully give you a vision of, why we want to do it on a consistent basis and what's the objective to it. Like I said, it's engaging the people that are already there and attracting those people that aren't there yet. So a couple of things. I want to go into some of the challenges that you guys talked about and some of the questions that you have right off before we started this call, because I want to tie that into what we're talking about here. And some of you were talking about people don't have the time. How do we get people to stay, and how do we grab their attention and keep it? And this is a big piece because there's so much information out there. There's so much information. And one of the things I want to say about with this is that, quite simply, you have to recognize that what you deliver is uniquely yours. You've just got to recognize that, like a fingerprint almost, right? Everyone has a different fingerprint. And it's hard to think that, with the billions of people on earth, everyone's got a unique fingerprint. But with that being said, is even if you're saying the same message, if there was another person who was doing a call on the same topic, and if for some way you were listening to those calls and word for word they said everything that I said and I said everything that they said, just the matter of how they deliver it and their pacing and their tone and their energy around it and whatever else in terms of how they deliver it, assuming everything else is the same, it would be completely different. And some of you might be attracted to that. Some of you might be attracted to what I'm doing. But either way, you have to recognize that even if the content is exactly the same in terms of words and actual content, the way we deliver it and through our own energy and insights is going to make it unique. And that's what a lot of it comes down to just, our own belief in ourselves and what we're delivering it. But in terms of getting people's attention, how long does something have to be? How short does something have to be? Let's forget about that for a little bit and just say, okay, well, yeah, obviously the shorter the better if we're talking general purposes. But if there are some elements that we want to consider, your headline or your title is going to be like the most important piece. It's actually a lot more important than the actual content until they get to the content. So when I say that, meaning it's the most important piece, is because if the title isn't grabbing people or moving people or attracting people, they're never going to get to whatever the content is. I don't care how long or short or amazing it is. And I don't want that to freak you out and go, oh my God, I'm not a marketer. I don't know, what are great titles. All I want you to do is the simplest way to do this in terms of titling things is if you can't think of a title, and I actually wrote it in my email yesterday, for those of you that are on my email list, when I was talking about, creating content in the actual call, is I just start to write my email. And I know that, some people are going to open my emails no matter what, because they like what I do, they follow me, they're a student, so forth and so on. That's a very small percentage of people. But then there's that, maybe that 80% of the people that the only way they're going to get to open the email or want to open the email is if the title somewhat grabs them or it resonates with them. And so there's two different versions. One version is like the curiosity title. So you're having a title. One of my best titles that I've used that I stole from somebody. When I say stole, meaning the mentors that I work with, and one of the guys I followed for years, he wrote an email, and the title of the email was "Goodbye." That was it, goodbye. And I'm like, as soon as I read that, the subject line, I'm like, oh my God, my heart like skipped a beat. I'm like, what does he mean, goodbye? Is he quitting? Is he like, what's going on? And I opened the email and I was reading on and I was like, oh, and I understood what he started to mean. But I used that in my title, goodbye. And all it was is I was saying goodbye to my office for the weekend and I'm heading out and I'm going to have a good time at the beach. And I tied it into some content, I forget what it was. But just that title alone, I had 2 times the open rate that I normally do. And so just to get an idea, it doesn't have to be, that's more of a curiosity or like, what do they mean? I did a title, I think one of my subject lines last week in one of my emails, and I used the person's first name, and it would say, Jeff, this is nonsense, or something like that. And it got a good open rate. And so sometimes it just start writing your email and see if you can just pull a title from just something you say that, by itself, like goodbye or this is nonsense, just gives someone like, well, what is nonsense, or what does goodbye mean, or just gets them a little bit curious about things. Bottom line is don't think about it too much, but just recognize and pay attention to what your titles are. If you're gonna be writing an article or even doing a video, just think of a title. What is a title? And some of the best titles or subject lines to emails or whatever you're doing are literal ones. Like I try and title my Tuesday calls literally as possible. Strategies for creating valuable content. Right? It's you don't have to think about it. You know exactly what you're going to be getting, when you come to the call. How to qualify a person, better qualify someone before you give the complimentary session. It's just a very straightforward title. And I recommend, straightforward titles for information calls that you're doing, even videos that you're doing. Just, how to blah, 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 or just be very straightforward with it. And again, you have to recognize that not everyone's going to be attracted to everything that you do. Even people in your audience. I mean, think about it. I'll just think about it for each and every one of you. Some of you are newer to me. Some of you have been with me for, over a year or plus, right? But you don't open every email that I send. I would hope you would, but the fact is you don't. But sometimes you have to think about yourself for other emails that you get and the things with me. It's like a lot of times you're deleting stuff, but I'm in front of you. You get the posts, you get the notifications, you get the emails. And then something might come through where you see the title, or maybe it's someone or a response, and you start to scan it real quick and something catches your eye and you click through, or you open it at least. And that's the reality of it, is it's just enough to get people to open it. A lot of you are talking about, people don't have the time and how to get them to stay. Well, the title is the start of it. But then you have to realize a lot of people aren't consuming the majority of your content. Like, that's just the reality of it. I'm not going to go into statistics now because it's hard to get into like what the real statistics are. But the fact of the matter is, like, if I scroll through, like, for instance, my Facebook page, and on my Facebook page, I got a lot of videos on my Facebook page because I'll post them there as well as my YouTube, and then on my blog as well, my university. But if I look at the statistics of my videos, and Facebook has some crazy back-end statistics, the reality is, in terms of views really don't mean anything when it comes to videos. I mean, it could mean someone was scrolling through their news feed and they slowed down or paused for a second when your video came up, or even if it was something else, and it played for a certain amount of time. But the videos automatically play when you stop and it's in front of you. But then it gives you statistics on how long people watch for. And the reality is the majority of the views, that if it says 100 views, like 98 of those 100 views, people watched for like 1 to 5 seconds, which means they didn't watch it. It means they just were scrolling and might have stopped, or whether it was on purpose for mine or something else, or they just left their computer, who knows. And then there's like, 2 people out of 100, and they didn't even make it, a quarter of the way through the video. And so you might be thinking, well, why am I creating this content if no one's reading it, no one's consuming it? Well, first off, you want to think about there are people that are consuming it. It might not be necessarily on places like a Facebook or things like that, but there are people within your audience, as you start to build it, that do consume it. It doesn't matter how much or how little. The fact is they do consume it. Don't concern yourself with that stuff. The bigger reason to be creating content is to be in front of people and to be engaging with them. And the fact of the matter is, people can love what you do even if they just get snippets of what you do. And the other reason why they're going to stay and watch something longer is if it's really relevant for them, or they're really engaged with something. You can't control how much or little someone's engaged. It just, again, it's going to come down to where they are in their world and how relevant that topic is for them at that point in time. So don't necessarily get caught up in those spaces. The best places for you to really get people's attention are on live events like this, like on a Tuesday call. Here's some you can get off the call at any time you want. You can just hang up, right? but the majority of people will stay on the call the whole time. And even some of you, I guarantee you right now, not all of you are just sitting at your computer listening and taking notes. I'm sure some of you are doing laundry and multitasking and doing some other things with me going on in the background. And some points you listen to and some points you don't. But the point is you're still receiving information. Live events, you're going to have a lot more attention span if people are attending a live event, or they're attending a live event, let's say online or virtual, like a webinar or a call or something like that. That's where you're going to people be getting through content a lot more. Even like a Tuesday call, if you're going to listen to the recordings, the odds that someone's going to sit down and plant themselves there, or even be listening on a drive or whatever, and listen to 100% of the call is rare. People are going to skip around. They might be listening to the part and I don't know, whatever, and they'll skip forward. They're gonna get what they want from it. So I'm sharing some of this stuff as a reality is we can't get caught up so much in how do we get people to stay and what's the best content and all those pieces. We've just got to start creating content and getting it out there. That's the biggest piece, and recognizing the biggest value to it is us staying in front of our audience. It's no different than Best Buy or a major store, brick and mortar store, putting their advertisement or their pamphlet or their flyer or whatever in the mail that you get every week or every day for that matter. And it's just 100 times out of 100 it gets thrown away. But it's just like that one time where all of a sudden you need a new TV or you need something else. That flyer is relevant for you. So I want to realize that's when we talk about marketing, that's where the marketing comes from, is us being in front of those people. People will consume it, they will get value from it, but if we can't get caught up in terms of what they're receiving and how do we increase that, we just want to make sure that the content is as relevant as possible for the people as you start to understand your audience more. One of the things people were asking about is, how do we demonstrate the value for coaching? How do we basically market ourselves and ask for the sale? How do we get business from it? So what I want to share is that, I'll reference some of the things I did already on the call today if you've been listening to this, and so you can reference it and you can see how you can build value for your coaching. First off, I want you to recognize is that I'm going to tie this into another question as well that someone asked is how do we develop authority and credibility? Just by the nature of creating content, whether you're doing videos, doing calls like these, podcasts, webinars, writing articles, just by the fact of doing that repetition over time, that alone can build your authority and your credibility. It can make you an expert in that area just by creating content. If you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, and go to the university, and you start to go through the videos, and just the sheer volume of videos that I have, or you go to my YouTube channel, and it's like, wow, there's over 100 videos here, and you start watching a few, you start seeing the titles. Right away, before you even listen to something, or even with just scanning on a few of them or seeing some of the titles, I've already built authority and credibility with somebody, assuming that title is relevant for them. So some of you are starting off and you're like, oh, Jeff, I don't have 100 videos. I don't have 100 articles, etc. That's okay. You start off with one. I started with one, and then I went to two, and I went to three, and went on from there. And that's exactly where you begin. So a lot of your credibility and authority is created by creating that content over time, and it just created one at a time. So if you're not at that spot yet, this is where you start to begin. And just recognize in the beginning, you might feel like you stink, like you have nothing good to say. And you know what? Maybe you're right. You know what? And so what if you're right? The whole objective of doing it is continually doing it and getting it better. If you're creating a video and it's really crappy right now and the quality is not bad or not great or whatever the case may be, keep creating the videos, and each time make it a little bit better. The more you start to practice what you're speaking, getting your language out there, whether it's in writing or a verbal format, that's the vital piece of what we do, because the more fluently you can speak on your topic matters, again, that's going to build authority and credibility. But the only way you're going to get there is by doing it consistently and working through the kinks and working through the ums and the ahs and the, what do I say next? And just allowing it to flow up and finding your voice. A lot of people want to find their voice, but they don't allow themselves the space to find their voice because they're not practicing creating content, or just writing something, or just shooting a video and seeing what's going from there and developing it from there. But that's where the credibility and authority is created. And then what can happen is how do we ask for the sale and build the value for the coaching? Well, part of the things I said already in this call is we build value for what we do when people listen to us. And like I said, they'll listen to us more on live events. It will grab their attention span more. But over time, if someone's going to stay with you longer, it means at some point they're consuming some of your content. Just like all of you don't consume all of my content, but you might have consumed like one piece. You watched one 3-minute video to the end. You listened to one call. That's all it really takes for someone to want to follow you. And then it's only going to be a matter of another time when you create another great subject line or that grabs their attention and they read or watch another one. But when they're consuming your information at some point, instead of how do you build the coaching well, part of it is simply you being that authority by delivering information, helping them with things. Like on these Tuesday calls, I really love to really give some valuable content, the kind of content that you would pay someone for, stuff that you can walk away with, like use now strategies and things you can actually do and use right away. That's more valuable. And the more you listen to me, the more you could begin to think like, wow, I could see how this person could help me. If I were to work with this person, I can see how they would help me. And that's what goes for you is as they listen to you and they start, observing what you're doing, they start to understand the value of it. How you can start to get across like coaching and stuff is quite simply using different words, different phrases that reference things you do. Earlier in the call today, for instance, I said, hey, if you were to hire me as your mentor coach, one of the first things that I would do with you is I would help you determine what your message is, who you're helping with what specifically. I don't know if you remember I said that. So right there, what I'm doing is I'm sharing a story that's tying into where I'm going with the current content, of this call. But what I'm also doing is I'm marketing my coaching. I'm basically saying like, hey, if you were to hire me, but here's what I'd be working with you on. So I'm allowing people that are listening to get the opportunity to almost live that out a little bit and start to understand what I would actually do with them. And for someone who's in a spot listening to that, who's actually struggling with their message and really having a hard time coming up with that, that's where that person listening to me say that might be like, wow, geez, Jeff could really help me with that. Or like, wow, that would be really valuable. So I'm trying to start to show you is whenever you're doing these things, start to share so when I'm working with my one-on-one clients, some of the things we go over are blah, blah, blah. Or if you're making a point about something, you can say, I remember I worked with one client and this person in particular was struggling with this. And, tell a story about what happened. And you might say like, well, Jeff, I don't have any clients or I haven't worked with any clients yet. So I'm saying, well, make it up then. And I'm not encouraging you to lie and make things up. But I remember when I was starting off earlier on, and I was starting to understand some of the marketing pieces of it, I remember there were things that I knew I would be working with clients on, et cetera. And I would just say, when I work with some of my clients, I would make up this imaginary client and I would just, instead of just making my point, I would just say, hey, when I was working with this client once, they came to me and they were challenged with X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that they wanted was clarity on this. So we began to work through, and one of the strategies we used was this. And then I would talk about that strategy, right? And then I would deliver the value through the strategy to the audience. But the lead into it was just basically me talking about how this client came to me and they were challenged with that. And the reason I'm bringing that up, in that talk, in that content, is because I want people to understand, number one, this is what I do. It's like, oh yes, you can hire Jeff as your coach. You can work with this person one-on-one. And then number two is they can start to see, if they're going through that challenge right then and there, they can start to see wow, this person, you, might be able to help them with that. So that's how you can start to, not only build the value, but if you will, sell your coaching is making more of an awareness of it. But I will say this, Just like I said in the beginning of my call, you can be very direct. I said, hey, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. I also have a group mentoring program. You can say it like that, and at least you want to make people aware. And I would recommend, if you're doing an event or something like that, say something like that. Shorter pieces of content, like short articles or videos, whatever, leave that stuff out, because that's not important. What I want to do in those instances, I want to drive people to my website, to my Facebook group, to some form of lead capture, because I want to get them on my audience. I want to get them I want to be able to be in front of them on a longer term basis. You know, they've got to develop a relationship with you. They've got to get to know you a little bit. So don't expect this one thing you do now, a video or a article, to, you know, sell someone and be like, oh my God, I'm going to hire this person as my coach. You know, that's like kind of their introduction, where you give some valuable pieces where hopefully they consume it enough to go like, wow, I like this. I want more. And that's where you want to make sure whatever you have, I did a call on it last week, is basically creating, you know, a free offer to build your email list. That was, I believe, call number 45. And again, creating content without a lead capture strategy is, I'm not going to say it's useless, but for the sake of conversation today, I'll say it's useless, because you can be creating great content, but if people like it, they have no way to like say, well, I'm going to subscribe or join something so I can be notified of when I want, you know, when more is happening, you know. So we need to have that lead capture strategy. That's why I referenced you to the call I did last week. You know, kind of it all ties together. So don't think about, you know, this piece of content, you know, selling coaching, et cetera, and this is going to, you know, make them buy coaching per se. It's a piece of the puzzle, meaning it's starting to build value for what you do. It's building value because you're helping them. And it's hopefully getting them to the spot where they're going to join your audience and they're going to be a part of what you do. And then at some point, now is the point where do you sell coaching, so to speak? Where do you get your clients from? It's as you're putting out that content, it's you engaging with people. So again, when I work with my clients, one of the things where I get to them is I say, hey, you know, now that we've set up, you know, and we know who we're going after, we've identified where they are, we've got your back end set up in terms of your email list, your lead capture, your free offer, you know, we get that end set up. Now we can start to create content, we can start to get out there, do some live events, you know, create a Facebook group, etc. You know, we've got the back end, but now what's happening as you do this stuff, as you put this content out there, all you're doing is looking for reactions. You're looking to engage with people. And some of the time, or a lot of the times, you know, our expectations of engagement are a lot higher than actually what happens. But anyone that likes something, that comments on something, and the good news is there's not going to be that many, meaning the good news meaning you're not going to have hundreds of people to engage with, because that would take a long time. But of course, we would want more engagement. But the point is that whenever we get reactions, whenever we get any type of comments or reactions from our content, that's where we want to start to engage with people. And from those conversations, that's where we can start to develop and start to understand, you know, where's this person's need? Where's the timing of that need? And if it's something I can help them with, you know, at that point, if we develop a relationship, I could actually say, hey, would you consider working with me as your coach based on what I'm seeing you go through? That's part of the value of creating that content, because we put it out there and we look for that engagement. And again, it's just going to be the few times. I mean, take a look at this call that I do on Tuesdays. You know, this call, you know, I don't even know how many people we have on the line today. Let's say it's 15, 20, I don't know how many people it is. Last week on the call, I had like 2 or 3 people call in, and for whatever reason, I'm like, hello, and I don't know if they heard anything, but they hung up. And then I had one other person call in, and that was it. And that one person I spent 45 minutes with, and at the end of the call, I helped them so much, I said, hey, would you consider hiring me as your coach? And they said, absolutely. And they hired me as their mentor coach. So the reason I'm sharing that is because, you know, you don't know what you're going to get for a reaction. You can get 15, 20 people on the call. You can get one person on your call. You can get a bunch of people watching or reading your content, or you can get nobody. But the fact is that no matter who is there, engage with them. When all of us get off the call, I'm going to ask you to get in my private Facebook group if you haven't, and make a comment on, you know, on the post. I'm going to write in there anyways, and I'm going to tag as many people as I can from the call. But I'm going to ask people to engage. I want to engage with those people and get them talking about this. And I want to get to know people and ask them, you know, create conversations with some of you and say, where are you at? Tell me more about your business. I don't know where it's going to go, but that's all I'm going to do to engage and start to see where people are. That's what I'm asking you to do. As you create this content, tag people, engage with people, whether they're commenting or you're recognizing that they're viewing something through something you can see on the back end of an email if someone's clicking through, and you're emailing them back and saying, hey, I noticed you clicked through on my last email to look at my call. Is this something you're interested in going to? Anything you can find to engage with people, that's what you're going for. And so in wrapping this stuff up, the last thing I'll say is that one, in terms of the fear, a lot of people, they have this fear of perfection and so forth and so on, is we've just got to get down to that place where we're just starting to come from this most authentic space. And if you're having challenges with this piece, the best thing I can give you at this point is I always tell people, when you're starting off, like, no one's listening, no one's watching, So it's like when you put something out there, odds are no one's going to listen to it, no one's going to read it, Sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. But the place I'd have you start from is just start writing about something that happened to you. And in my email, I don't know if some of you got on my email list, I wrote an email yesterday, and I didn't know what to write about. And so and a lot of times I don't know what to write in my emails. And what I'll do is I'll just start off with something like, hey, I received a text this morning from my son, my 10-year-old son, and it said, quote, I love you, Dad, with a bunch of hearts after it. I'm like, it made my day, and it got me fueled up, and blah, blah, blah. And that's where I just started my email, and I just started to write from there. And the reason I bring that up is that if you're having trouble with this, is just the best thing you can do, especially with the way things are today and what people want, is they want you. And remember I said earlier, you're as unique as your fingerprint, and everyone has a unique fingerprint in the world. And how you're going to be unique is by making your fingerprint, meaning just being you. How do you be you? It's just start talking, start writing, start filming on just something that happened to you. And whether it was good or bad or ugly or anywhere in between, just say, hey, I went to the gym this morning and I was in a really bad space because I didn't get some sleep, or I woke up and almost seemed like everything was wrong. And then I asked myself a question, and I said, well, what's the opportunity here? And all of a sudden I started thinking, blah, 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 blah. Just start going off on that tangent. Or, I was in the middle of my workout today, or my husband, my wife, my best friend called me up and said this. Just talk about real life. Like, look at what's on TV. Look at what people are attracted to. It's reality shows. It's real life, because they can relate to it. People can relate to it, and there's some form of validation in their own lives, because they realize that they're not the only one going through some of these challenges, whether they're highs or they're lows, good or the bad. And so that's where I'd ask you to start with, and just see what it feels like to write or video what it is. And what I'd ask all of you and invite you to is, in my private Facebook group, the Selling Coaching Group, is that's why I invite people to share content in there. It's a safe space, because only the people in the group can actually see what you're posting or writing, or the videos especially. But also the difference is you are getting exposure, meaning there's over 700 people in the group, so it doesn't mean everyone's seeing it, obviously, but you are putting it out in the real world, so to speak. But it's also it's in a group of coaches that are, a lot of them have or have had the same challenges and fears that you maybe currently have. So I'd invite you to use that platform, not only to get exposure, but especially to just get practice getting some of your stuff out there. And there's a lot of people that have been very supportive, when you start to create content and putting in there. So finding a space like that, and if I can provide that for you, I'm happy to, is finding a space where you can just start to write or video, like I said, from a story or something that happened to you, just some real life, and not really be concerned about where it goes or how you tie it into something that's special or valuable. Just start to do that to begin with, and use that to post it, and just say, hey, you know what? I've been having challenges, creating some content, and so I took up Jeff's challenge and said, oh yeah, I'm gonna write something in here and just see where it goes. And that's what I'd encourage you to do. Just see where it goes. See what you create from it. All you gotta do is start from that space and see where it develops. And then what happens is, over time, as you find your voice and as you feel more confident, you can, now wedge your way into delivering something more specific, especially if you've identified, or once you've identified, who you're talking to and what you're helping them with. You can start with one thing, like a quote, and make it your own, or something that you read and then give your opinions on it. There's a lot of different ways of working it in, but that's a great place to start. It's just from that authentic space.